Rev up your engine. I'm always telling people, not such a hot idea to buy a car that was totaled in a wreck, retitled as a wreck car. We're going to analyze this Honda Ridgeline, the first generation, 2013, show you what you got, what they were making in those days. So, we'll start with, this thing was wrecked, totaled by an insurance company. It had 76,000 miles on it. Then he bought it for $15,000, which is less than you're going to pay, of course, for when it hadn't been wrecked. But, in his case, it worked out pretty good. It had front clip damage. You can see it looks perfectly fine now. They totaled it, then it's got a refurbished title. Now, it is a Massachusetts car, four-wheel drive. Now, he doesn't tow anything. The previous owner towed his boat. They're not outrageous towers. They tow 5,000 pounds. It doesn't matter if it's the first generation like this or the second generation. They're still 5,000 pounds. Now, these first generations are pretty interesting because really the first mass-produced front-wheel drive pickup truck that anybody's ever seen. And they made these as unibody construction. They're not body on frame like an F-150 pickup. Of course, they can't haul and tow as much. They don't have a big old solid frame. They do ride better. They got better suspension systems. And the reason people buy these generally are because they want a reliable pickup truck, and they're not necessarily an F-150 or a Ram guy who's going to be towing a ton of stuff. Matter of fact, he didn't tow anything with this thing. It was wrecked in the front. Let's look under the hood. Hondas are known for extreme reliability over time, because you never know when something's been wrecked. Now, as we look around, I can see where work was done, but the welding's good. They did a good job. It's not leaking any type of oil around. These Honda V6 engines are extremely reliable. Now, realize even today, they're living in dinosaur ages because it's got a rubber timing belt. Honda has such great engineers. You'd think they would have gone to timing chains, right? Everybody else is, but they're still making them with timing belts in their V6 engines. I guess they just don't want to retool it to put a timing chain on. So, with one of these, they are interference engines, so you really want to change the timing belt about every 100,000 miles or so that it doesn't break and then the valves bend inside the engine and you got to put another engine and it costs a small fortune. A little nitpicky on my behalf, but really, I mean, they should join the 21st century like everybody else. They run fine, but realize this is a big, heavy truck. It is a gas hog. It's a big truck. On the worst days, he gets 15, and lately he's getting 19. So, it's like any truck. It's going to get relatively low gas mileage. You think it's more efficient, it's going to get better gas mileage. No, they're just big, heavy vehicles, and that's the kind of gas mileage they get. So the first thing you're going to ask, of course, is did he get ripped off buying this truck that was totaled by an insurance company? Well, no. He hasn't had to do any kind of work on the engine or the transmission, which is where it was hit in the front. These days, they total cars faster than they used to. There's a real lack of mechanics that can do the work, and a lot of times they just total them out to get them out of their hair so they don't have to mess with them anymore. Now, the interesting thing about this particular one, which is often the case with a good retitled car that was totaled by an insurance company, is this was originally owned by a guy who owned a body shop, a dealership, a junkyard. So he got tired of this and he had his guys fix it, then he sold it on. Now, I see that a lot on the East Coast because you realize one thing, body shops charge a lot of money for fixing stuff. So the insurance company has to pay the going rate, which of course is outrageous. But people that can fix them cheaper can often fix them perfectly fine for sometimes 2 to 3 times less than what the insurance company has. I got friends here in Jersey, and they go to certain parts on the port, and there's all kinds of guys fighting over, if you drive with the wrecked car in, who's going to fix it cheaper, and they do decent work, but you're getting it done at a lower price, and it's still a good vehicle. And actually on the East Coast, there's plenty of guys that actually have businesses, and what they do is they buy the totaled ones, but they only buy ones they know they can make good money and have a good vehicle, and they actually take the pictures of the wrecks beforehand, and they show the people that are coming to buy the ones that have been totaled by the insurance company. They say, here it is, here was the wreck, here it's fixed now, go ahead and compare them. So the people can honestly say, okay, it was hit there, well, it seems to be all fixed there. They can be fixed cheaper. Those guys are the guys you want to buy them from because they're pros. They know what they're doing. You don't want to go to a car auction yourself and buy one that, say, was flooded or wrecked. It may not be worth fixing, and then you're stuck with it. You're better to have a pro do it, and then you can buy it from them after a guy like me checks it out. For example, with this car, he just told me the guy's payout was only $5 grand. So for $5 grand, he got the whole truck and they fixed it and sold it for 15. The engine, transmission wasn't damaged, and the rest is just metal. and plastic. That stuff can be fixed a lot cheaper privately. And then if you can find a vehicle like this, go right ahead, because he said he saw similar ones, 30,000 miles more than this, and they were going for $20,000 with a lot more mileage on them because they had a clean title. Sometimes getting one with a dirty title, if you know the history of it, can actually be okay. But like I say, at an auction, you're playing with big boys there. They know which ones to buy, which ones not to buy. You don't. You're better to buy them after they're already fixed. Now, he did mention that when he got it, it wouldn't go into third gear. He took it back, the guy fixed it really fast, because what probably happened was the shift solenoids, some of the solenoids, probably when they did the work, they unplugged the wire, forgot to plug it back in, because he said it was really fast, and now it works perfectly fine. That's why you're better dealing with a person like that than just buying them open-ended and hope that you can fix it. But of course, you never know if there's something hidden. So, go with the fancy Autel scan tool. Now he's got a transformer running in here. It makes a little noise, but that doesn't really matter. Hook up the scan tool. Diagnostics. You can see it's got a nice clean dash, easy to read. And you can see it's got 83,816 miles on it. And of course, it makes more sense in a truck to have cloth seats. They're still in excellent shape. Plenty of room for kids, adults. A lot of room in one of these things. With an auto scan. All right, we'll check for any codes. No codes at all. Look at live data. Start her up. Typical Honda starts right up. A lot of information to go through on one of these. And here we go. We'll go through it all. If anything is odd, kind of doubt it. Charging system's good, 13.875. And we see the long-term fuel term is 0.78. Well, that's not bad. That's less than 1%. And if you're only, adding 1%, that's nothing. My vehicle's got 83,000 miles. That's nothing. It's almost running perfect. Everything's good. Remember, it's all color-coded. It's black. It's all good. Catalytic temperature. As you can see, both sides are almost exactly the same. 205.3, 2.6, 207. So they're mirroring each other. They're working perfectly. So whatever happened during the wreck was definitely fixed correctly before he bought it. So in this case, hey, he got a good car that had been totaled. And the interesting thing is, he didn't take it to a guy like me. He didn't take it to anybody. He just bought it from the guy who fixed it. And the guy did a good job fixing it. There are a lot of people like that on the East Coast that'll do it with these things. These days, you can actually find more vehicles like this that are okay. For one main reason. There was such a lack of cars for sale during coronavirus, new ones and used ones, that a lot of people, things they used to just throw away, they're now fixing, and they do a decent job fixing it. I remember back in the day when I was going to school in Canada, a guy from Detroit was going to art school, and he had this Ford that he bought for $100 out of a junkyard. It was an LTD, and it was a nice looking car. But back in the early 70s, they just thought, what the heck, we'll just take it to the junkyard. He spent like 50 bucks getting the thing running, and he was driving it from Detroit to Toronto back and forth. Some of those days are coming back, because when there aren't enough cars for sale, people will start fixing ones that, hey, it doesn't seem all that bad, let's fix it up and see what happens. Now, it's the Honda, the first thing you notice, smooth as can be. It's got a nice smooth idle. It's a truck, so we don't have to slow down for my big hump here. Nothing's going to drag. And for a truck, it is a unibody construction, and it actually rides quite well. The owner was thinking about putting bigger wheels on it, lower profile. I told him don't, because it rides good now, and it won't ride as well. If you're a person who likes the way they look and don't care how they ride, go right ahead. But if you want a smoother ride like this has, we're going over the horrible bumps in Rhode Island and you don't feel them all that well here, you'd leave it alone. Now as you drive along, I'm listening. I don't hear wheel bearings or anything. A lot of times if cars get wrecked, the wheel bearings will go out and then they'll start roaring. Roar, 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 the faster you go. There's none of that in this thing. I gotta say, the guys do pretty good body work. If he wouldn't have told me that it was wrecked in the front, I would have had to look pretty close. And here we go. It's a Honda, so. The engine's totally solid. The transmission's shifting like a dream. Front end, let go, track's perfectly straight. They did a really good job fixing this thing. Nowadays, you might be able to find a good car that had been totaled and put back together again with the supply of used cars being so tight. Well, it is the Honda pickup truck. So even though this thing's been wrecked, truthfully, if somebody would have brought me this car, not told me anything about it, and I took it for a road test, once I looked under the hood, of course, I could tell it had been wrecked, but I wouldn't have known this thing had been in any kind of big wreck because it has no handling problems. Engine tranny works fine. I don't hear wheel bearing noises. I would never have known until I started looking under stuff. So, you got a good deal. Well, that was a nice road test. And, of course, I like this because it has a key. It's not one of those keyless ignition systems that are easy to steal. And, check it out, an actual emergency brake. There it is. Not an electric button that has problems. one you step on and then just pull the release. So he got lucky and got a car that was totaled and hasn't had any real problems with it. And he even have a guy check it out. But he did buy from the guy who fixed it, who owned a bunch of shops and stuff. And they know, they're not stupid people. They know what vehicles are worth buying back and fixing and then selling, because they know the whole history of the vehicle. They know it was a front clip that was hit. They know it wasn't flooded out by salt water of the ocean, in which case you just say goodbye to the car. Because I remember back in Houston, after Hurricane Sandy up here on the East Coast, this guy at a Shell station in Houston, he bought like 12 cars, brought them back to Houston on flatbeds, and he had one of these, and his son was draining the transmission and salt water was coming out of it. And I said, what the heck is going on? He said, oh, my dad bought a bunch of Hurricane Sandy vehicles, and he's getting me to get all the water out. We're gonna get them running and sell them. And I'm like, whew, now there's somebody you wouldn't want to buy a used car from that was totaled by their insurance company. If you can find something that looks and runs as good as this, it may not be a bad idea in these days where there's not enough used cars that people will be fixing the ones that they used to throw away. The Honda, the engines and transmissions generally last forever if you take care of them. And for $15,000 these days, that's a steal of a job with that kind of mileage on it. And sure, it's got retitled because it was wrecked. But hey, he's planning on keeping this thing forever. He's going to undercoat it so it won't rust like his Altima did and the control arms fall off. So if you're not going to sell a car on, you're going to keep it for years and years. So what if it's got a refurbished title? You're not really going to sell it on until there's nothing left and it's worth nothing anyway. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.